and we're going to talk about how to make money in real estate. That's my favorite quote by Warren Buffett. If you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you'll work until you die. I saw that like 2014, and it really hit me. I was like, that's very interesting, right? Because we spend most of our lives trading our time or our efforts for money. And then if you can't accumulate enough to then like draw down on your bank accounts, you'll work until you die. And that's actually kind of a staggering statistic, the percentage of people that die within 5 years of retirement. Berman, look it up. It's like 63%, I want to say, because you stop working, you can't spend money like you used to because now you're on a fixed income, and you get depressed and die for one reason or another. Okay. Don't die! Okay, so just how to, right? We got some lenders in here. Can people still buy an owner-occupied house for 0 down? Yeah, it's pretty common. We got VA, we have USDA, and then there's 0% down conventional loans. Am I missing any? VA, USDA, 0% down conventional. Maybe FHA if your house burned down. You can get a grant for that too. So it really starts with connecting with professionals like you guys here. Like, meet some real estate agents, there's lenders here, connect with a lender, and just start the conversation, like how can I do this? And then we can work through my journey, and I actually did this by accident. So my first deal was a duplex. But this was in 2009. Market in 2009 was kind of interesting. It was still going down. Because I called my real estate agent at the time in 2010, and I said, hey, I got to sell this thing. How much is it worth? And she laughed at me and said, a hell of a lot less than you paid for it. Why don't you move back to Medford and start selling real estate? So I did. So I bought it. The value continues to go down. So I was either looking at a duplex or buying like a $350,000 single family home. Now, mind you, back then you could get stuff for 90 bucks a foot. So I'd get like a pretty nice house, like a 3,500 square foot house. But for one reason or another, I just decided I wanted to do a duplex. I had read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And it talked about, it was a different definition of asset and liability, right? So if you go to a bank, an asset is something you can sell for money, and a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. Well, really what it comes down to is an asset is something that puts money in your pocket, and a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. So if I were to buy my single family house, like I was going to, got a chimney too, and I lived in it, that would be, in Robert Kiyosaki's opinion, a liability, because I had to make a payment every month. But if I were to buy a duplex, half of it gets rented out, right? And then I live in the other half. So what ended up happening is I bought this thing, rented out one side, lived in the other, and the renter covered the entire payment. So I think it cost me like 50 bucks a month in utilities because the entire mortgage was covered. And at that point, you start down this road of like beginning to create a snowball where now you're not spending money on rent or on your mortgage like you would be if it was just a house, but instead you're collecting it. So, and here's the math. It's on Putnam Street. You guys know where Putnam Street is? Logan does. Felony Flats. I used to wake up to gunshots. But the good news is I didn't have to live there forever. I lived there for about 6 months. So I paid $115,000. I put about $4,000 down because this was an FHA loan. And I think the next slide kind of has a breakdown of this stuff. Oh, I think you wrote the right one, never mind. So FHA loan, it was 4.75% interest. What's funny about this, in 2009, that was the lowest interest rates had ever been. I remember my lender was my uncle. He's like, hey, we got a lock today. They're never going to be this low again. They're going to go back up to 6. Like, okay, we lock it, and then they like went down and down and down for like the next decade, right? Because rates today are what, 4% for 30-year fixed with little points. Okay, so the payment was, or is, right, because it's 30-year fixed. That means principal and interest payment stays the same for all 360 payments. The only thing that changes is if property taxes go up or your insurance cost goes up. So right now, that thing costs me $800 a month. The rents are $25.50. So this is just my first deal. So it brings in $25.50. Rents for, or the mortgage is $800. So that's $1,450 a month in what's called cash flow, which goes back to what Buffett said, right? I don't have to work for this money. So that's the cash flow side of investing, right? So think about the difference between buying a nice big house versus buying a duplex. So back, if we were to rewind, the payment was $800 a month. Well, this side rented, I think for $850, and then I had a property manager, so I netted $800. And so I did, I lived for free. And so what happens when you do that, you have the horizontal line one, is you can save money. Save $2,000 a month. I mean, whatever your rent would be. And then in the next year or two, you'll have a down payment, right? So you can buy the first one is a duplex. This is the only time you can get into a multifamily with less than 20% down is if you're a first-time home buyer. So what's a duplex go for these days? 400?
400. Average 400, yeah.
I'm gonna need some math help here. 3.5%, 12, 15,000 bucks. Am I right?
On 400.
On 400? Yeah,
14.
14.
Yeah.
Well, I like 15 better. So 15,000 you're down. Right now you can't really get closing costs, so your closing costs be like 8,000 bucks. So if you can somehow scrape together 23,000 bucks, you could buy a $400,000 duplex and start this. So I mean, it would have been ideal, right, if we could all have bought one for $115,000. Best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time is today, right? Because based on what we're seeing with everything getting more expensive, real estate's not going to be getting any cheaper. Does that make sense? Like gas, lumber, housing shortage. So the reality of us having like a big enough expansion in the supply of homes for prices to decrease is very unlikely. So people keep moving here. People keep moving to the US. There's so many people moving here that the people who live here are moving to Idaho or Texas, right? So we get our $400,000 duplex. We get 23,000 down. Is this doable? That's 2,000 a month for 12 months. Okay. What's the average rent right now? What are we paying in rent?
It was like 25 square foot.
About 25 a square foot. Okay, so 1,000 square foot apartments, $1,250. If we're maybe 1,500 bucks. That'd be on the cheap side. Tanya's like, what?
More.
I was paying like 1,700 a month.
Okay, that's perfect. Rent's $2,000. That I like this math. So, Ben, what's a payment on 400,000?
With rates today, probably like 2,200.
Okay, so we buy our duplex, 3.5% down. Let's say it's 2,400 because you have mortgage insurance. And each side of this duplex rents for 2,000 a month, right? So you minus the rent for the one side, and then your net out of pocket is 400. So now you want a $400,000 asset that's going to go up some percentage of value per year. Is that fair to say? I think rents have gone up. You're netting 400, so you can save 1,600 a month. Yeah, we're not too far off. Thanks. Now 1,600. So if we go for 10 months, that's 16,000. So say we do it for 20 months, you save $32,000, and you could do this again. But, well, actually no. what you would want to do at this point is you buy a duplex, you move out, you rent the other side. So now you're at positive 1,600. Right, because you got 4,000 coming in rents, 2,000 aside, and you got 2,400 in your mortgage, so you're cash flowing 1,600. You know, you can get into the nitty gritty about like 2% for vacancy, and you know, I'm gonna have to replace the water heater, so I'm gonna save a little bit of money. But just for round numbers, you buy the duplex, you're saving 1,600 a month, owning it versus renting it, assuming that you can scrape together 23,000 bucks. So let's call it, you save 1,000 a month for 2 years. Now, you're making 1,600 a month in your sleep off of your first property. If cash is still tight, like, you know, it's gonna be, and it is for a lot of people, now you're plus 1,600 to the bank account. And on top of that, you can very quickly save enough for like a 5% down conventional mortgage. So then you go buy your single family home. So you gut it out in the duplex with some crazy renter neighbors for, let's say, a year. And then you go, I mean, a $400,000 house gets you something decent, right? So now you go buy a $400,000 house. This is what Eli Matthews has done. It's called mortgage hacking. So this is deal number one. And then number two, to make yourself happy, you buy your $400,000 home, you put 5% down, right? That's your 5%. You took the calculator. How much is the 380 mortgage? 4%. Who's faster?
And how much down?
19,000.
1,900?
How much for the down?
20,000.
And what's the interest, 4%?
4.
Payments, 2,000.
2,100 a month. So you live in this for a year, because if you buy a house and owner occupy it, you have to live there for a year. Do you think you can rent your $400,000 house out for more than $2,100 a month?
Absolutely.
Okay, so now, so this is, we'll call this year 2 and year 1. So this is where it gets kind of fun. What we haven't even gotten into are all the things that are happening you don't realize that are happening. You're paying down your mortgage, right? The balance is getting paid down every month. Even if it's a couple $100, it's a couple $1,000s a year that you're on the plus. The interest expense on your investment is a tax write-off. And it's going up in value. So we can say we're plus 2,000 in our net worth because we're paying it down. If the interest was 12,000 at, say, a 33% tax rate, you're saving another $4,000 in taxes. And once this is rented out, you can divide it by 27, and that's what you get to depreciate. You guys understand what depreciation is? Divided by 27. 27 and a half to be exact. And then you get, so you can write this off $15,000 a year, which that's another $5,000 in savings. So not only are you making $1,600 a month, you're now saving another $11,000 a year in tax savings from depreciation and interest write-offs and debt pay down. So now 1,600 times 12, 19,200 plus 11. So now you're up, after year 1, 30,000 a year. So if you were working 40 hours a week, that's $15 an hour you're making if you just accumulate the tax savings and the income from your first duplex. So and this doesn't stop, right? If anything, rents will go up. I think that's a slide, Tanya. I got the rent slide. The only time rents leveled out was the last time the housing market crashed. But they didn't really go down. They just like flattened out for a minute. You can see it right here. I think it's about 2008. So we know that over time, rents will go up. So these numbers only get better. Now, after you've owned this for 27 and a half years, you can no longer depreciate it. So by the time the thing's paid off, We'll talk about 1031 exchange, you'll do it again. Okay, and so now we bought this guy, right? So year 3, let's say we buy a $500,000 house. We do 25% down, or 5% down, which is another 25,000 bucks. And let's call our mortgage $2,500 a month. Ben, what is a $400,000 house right for?
24.
You left me. 24.
Still here.
All right. So now you're not right. You're up 1,600 here. That's why we always want to buy multifamilies first, right? So for 400,000, you get 2 rentable doors, or for 400,000, you get 1 rentable door. So obviously your cash flow is going to be less. So your cash flow here is plus 300 a month. But then we can go back and add all this stuff up again for another 11. So that's 3,600 a year there plus 11,000. So that's 14,600. Call it 15,000 to be easy. So now you own 2 properties, 3 doors, 30 plus 15. Now these combined, the economic benefit is $45,000 a year. So you can see how the snowball effect starts to roll. You get one, probably not in the ideal neighborhood. Maybe it needs a little bit of work. You got to paint the inside or do what Matt's doing and like gut the whole thing, new roof, windows, the whole 9. But it's going to be worth it. Think about the long term, the fact that you cannot always work for money. At some point, you have to have your money work for you. And how many of you guys have heard that and been like, what the hell does that mean? I remember thinking like, yeah, okay, yeah, make your money work for you. I'm like, how? How do you like, I put it in the stock market, it goes up and it goes down. I don't seem like it's working for me. But real estate is one of the few things where it really does work for you. So we can go back to depreciation. So the IRS sees anything that's income generating, like, you know, if it was a business, all this stuff in here, right? These are all business write-offs. I can do it one of 2 ways. I can expense it, and I can take the cost of this TV and say this TV's life is less than a year, and write the $1,000 off. So if I made $100,000, now I pay taxes on $99,000. That's a tax write-off. Now depreciation, let's say that this TV was $1,000, but it's going to live for 5 years. Then I get to take $200 a year off of my taxable income for 5 years. So the benefit of depreciation is you don't pay taxes on it, but your lender can add it back in for your income. So that's like a little tax strategy thing. When you're buying assets, and obviously like when you buy a house, you can't write off the $400,000. What have you done? You can't write off the $400,000 year 1, right? So you have to take it over what the IRS calls the life of the asset. In this case, if it is a residential house, a residential structure, so 1 to 4 units, you divide it by 27.5. The IRS says that in 27.5 years, your house will be worth 0. Therefore, you take 127.5 of the value of the house, and you can write that off on your taxes every year. Right, so you made $100,000. Your depreciation was $16,000. You now pay taxes on $84,000, but your lender sees you made $100,000. Right, and if you figure your blended tax rate's 33%, that's like $5,500 a year you didn't pay in taxes. So that's $5,500 a year that stays in your pocket due to depreciation. Any questions on that? Does that make sense?
I got a question.
Oh.
What if you goofed and you bought a single family home first? And you can't convince anyone you're going to move into a duplex, so does that just take longer, or is there like a side step there where you pick up another single family home maybe?
How to capitalize on the property you already own. If you own the home you live in, you should be saving to move out and rent it in here. You got 2 options there. Do some really hard bargaining to buy a duplex, but the reality is the reason that we buy our first thing is the duplex, because normally you have to be 20% down and typically 25% down to buy a multifamily. The secondary mortgage market, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they really want home owners, owner occupants, right? We buy the house, we live here forever, we mow the yard, take care of it, whatever. If it's an investment property, it's a higher risk, because if you had a duplex and you had your home and you hit a financial crisis, which one would you stop making the payment on first?
You're not living in the one you're not living in.
The one you're not, exactly, right? So they want you to put more down, and then you also get hit on the rate. But if you're FHA, which is Federal Housing Administration, otherwise known as a first-time homebuyer, you can do 3.5% down. Tyler Lake, I think he's probably watching, he bought a fourplex, about a $500,000 fourplex with like 20 grand down. The thing's doubled in value, spitting off cash like you wouldn't believe. And they lived there for a year. I remember his wife called me crying, "You gotta get us out of here!" It was like 3 more months, baby, and you can buy a house again. So, like Taylor, in your case, or if you guys own a house, what's the mortgage, what do you think it's gonna rent for? Is the first question, then start doing the math. Okay, assuming 5% down conventional loan, how long will it take for us to save enough money to buy another one and rent this one out? That's like the low cash approach, right? Because it's just 5% down, 5% down, 5% down, versus this is $100,000. So if you're not like amassing 100 grand every couple years, which is pretty tough to do because that's gonna be after taxes, for a lot of us, the only way to do this is it's called mortgage hacking.
And the second option for you, because this is what I had to do, is your property appreciates, and then you take equity out of that, and then now you have enough to potentially do the multi.
Yeah, we can hit
Yeah.
HELOCs. Now, I heard for a while that they stopped doing them, is that? Are they
No,
back?
a lot of banks did. Rogue does not. Rogue did not stop.
Yep.
And they were still going up to 95% combined loan to value
Yep.
on a primary, or as I just found out, 90% on a duplex.
Ben's always figuring stuff out. Yeah, so HELOC stands for home equity line of credit. Okay, so you paid 400. Say you paid 400,000 in 2016. I remember school in the market was really high in 2016. Terrifying, right? Now you fast forward 6 years, this place is worth 750. Look at probably a pretty real number. If you own or occupy this house, I know Northwest Community Credit Union will loan you 95% of its value in a HELOC. Okay, so at this point, you owe 300,000. Okay, so that means you got 450 in value locked up. It's illiquid. 712.5 minus 300, 412. So you got 450 and what's equity, right? You got 2 ways to access that equity. Sell it or get a line of credit against it. And there's 2 ways you do a line of credit. They can be simple interest, where you pull the money out and you just pay, say, 5% on that, and it's just interest only, or you can have it amortized and then lock in a payment for like 15, 20, 30 years. So you got 2 options there. So in this case, like Ben was saying with Taylor, they're only gonna do 95% of this number. So and then we take you got the 450 in equity. Yeah, so let's just round it out. You bought it for 4, it's worth 750. You may have access to $400,000 in home equity, which you could pull out, put in the bank for 60 days, right? And then plop it onto something. But that just gets a little bit riskier because one of the rules is when you buy cash flowing assets, it has to cash flow positive at least $1 a month after all your expenses. So the question is, how many things can you afford to own that make $100 a month? It would be as many as I could buy. But how many things can you afford to own that lose $100 a month? That's going to be a limited number. So as long as this payment plus the mortgage payment are covered by your rent, utilities, property taxes, by $1, you can make that move. So that may be an option. Do you guys do home equity lines of credit? Or just, what are the rates? Are they pretty steep now?
For mine, it just depends. I have, I can do them on second homes and investments too, so, but we do them really fast and, on those higher risks, so they're usually between 6 and 8, depending on the,
Yeah, so that would be,
investment or not.
so the way you want to calculate that, so let's say you pull 200,000 out, you go times 0.06, you divide it by 12. $1,000 a month. So let's say you're conservative, you pull 200K out. That's gonna cost you $1,000 a month at 6% interest. So then, if that scenario pops up, we can go 200, that's $800,000. So if you could find an $800,000 unit, that'd probably be a fourplex, I'd guess, or duplex in Ashland. You're gonna have to calculate, Ben, you run the numbers on, what's a $600,000 mortgage at 4.5%? Right, so we did 200K down. And then you got a $600,000 mortgage. Four and a half. See, I'm making everyone learn how to do mortgage calculators. Yeah.
I'm 4.5% down.
0 down. $3,800. So your payment is 38 plus 1,000, right? So that's 4,800. And now you would know, like, okay, can I get north of 5,000 a month in rent? If yes, pull the trigger. If no, find something that has higher rents. And we're much less worried about this number as we are the rents. Because purchase price, every $10,000, you go up in purchase price is about $40 a month. But if you can crank the rents up, they make all the difference in the world. So if you are looking at investment properties, be willing to overpay. I had a situation, a liquidity event last year. I sold some businesses, and I ended up with a big pile of money I had to reinvest same year for tax purposes, and I bought everything I could find. Absolutely everything. And they were not great deals in November. And we just raised rents, and they turned into very good deals. Like, I paid way too much. One of them was worth $550, I paid $650. One was worth $3, I paid $320. One was worth $4, I paid $425. You know, not like crazy numbers, but it was like, none of them appraised. The appraisers were like, they're paying too much, I don't care, I need to sell, I need to buy it. But they all cash flowed. And we can, if we get everybody's emails, I can send you guys, what's the next slide? A spreadsheet that'll help you figure that out, and we can go through it together. Okay, so compounding interest is a very funny thing. Like what we had talked about, it's the same concept, is you buy one, and it's making you 30,000, right after you move out, that's your duplex. And then you don't sell it, but you stack on top, and the second one's making you 15,000. Let's just say that each one after that, economic gain. So remember, that's cash flow, plus the tax savings, plus the reduction in debt. You add that up, and that's how you get to 15,000. That way you don't leave and go like, this thing is not gonna make 1,100, 1,200 a month. No, not on paper, right? You'll see your checking account go up by 300 or 400 a month. But then if you zoom out and look at what you owed at the beginning of the year and then what you owed at the end of the year, you add that. And then you go to your accountant and say, hey, I want to depreciate this asset. And then that's where you get that number. And by doing this over time, and then using HELOCs, right? So Nikki can land on investment properties. That means is all of your properties are going up in value and the debt's getting paid down, it creates this big gap right here. And this is your equity. And then if you can use it properly, pull some money out of there, making sure that you're cash flow positive the whole time, it just grows faster and faster. And let's say the market does crash. When the market crashed, rents did not go down. Rents stayed the same. Because what happens if a market crashes? It starts with an F and ends with or closure. Right? Foreclosures. And believe it or not, the people that used to live in the house are not making the payment on it anymore, still need somewhere to go. Right? They still need a roof over their head. So they're going to rent. So the only time you lose in real estate is if you sell. Now, we make most of our money representing sellers. But the reality is the best thing for you guys to do is to keep everything. The guy that owns the most units in Jackson County, like north of 2,000, he told me, I'm like, what's the secret sauce? He's like, never sell. Never sell anything. Right? Because if you would have sold it in 2015 thinking the market was going to crash, and you like waited for the market to crash, still waiting, you sold in 2021, or you sold in 2020, right? It's just like, easiest thing to do, never sell. Because eventually, even the house that you live in, if it's a nice big house, you may want to sell that and immediately buy some smaller things, right? Like there's some things that you just shouldn't rent, or that wouldn't really make sense to rent. I met a guy that bought Tom Brady's old house. You don't want to rent that thing out. They're like 15 AC units, they all busted. He's telling me he's spending millions on it. You know, so like reasonable homes you want to keep. And if you have to, sell and immediately deploy the cash back into cash flowing real estate. What happens is the market goes up and you own real estate, you're in the ocean, right? And as the tide goes up, all the boats lift. The only people that get hurt are the ones that are on the shore and they get flooded out, right? And they drown. So as long as you own real estate, don't sell it, just buy more. And if the market crashes, buy more. Just don't sell, like, because you ruin compound interest when that happens, right? And if there was any way that you could have held on to some stuff during the last market crash, the market is way far surpassed what the last high ever was. Don't sell. So this was a deal I bought. I paid too much for it. This is what I paid $650. It was worth $550. So the rent was $1,000 a unit. There was 4 units. Can you see that back there? So our total monthly rent was $4. And then if we scroll, see if I can zoom. I bet I can.
I got it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We see it now?
Yep.
Okay. So this is called a pro forma. This is how you figure out whether or not the investment makes sense. Rent times 4, 4,000. We know that there's going to be vacancy, and I'm always heavy on vacancy. Vacancy rate's like less than 1%. But the reality is, when someone moves out and someone moves in, there's a week or two, right? If you got to change carpet, paint, etc. So we always figure a vacancy rate. So 95% of that number is 3,800. Okay. Now I figured my mortgage at 2,200. That's just the principal and interest, because I deal with taxes and insurance below. Water, sewer, garbage. Those are my utilities. Property taxes at $300 a month. Insurance at $100 a month. 7% from property management. So my non-mortgage costs were $867. My total monthly costs are $3,056. That means the monthly cash flow with a loan is $750, $743. But watch what happens when we raise the rents. Okay, so if I hit these guys and somehow I magically get 30,000 off, that's going to save me 120 a month. So write that down. So 30 equals 120. Tanya, I'm gonna need your typing skills.
Oh gosh.
Make that 1,100, because that's what we can raise rents this year, 9.9%. Hit enter. So now, gross is 44. After vacancy is 42. Cash flow bumped almost 400 a month. So that's how we look at these investment things. You don't try to hit them on price, because grinding 30,000 off of something right now isn't even realistic. It's more like paying 50,000 over so you actually get a chance. So you pay the man or woman what they're asking, and then the question is, can I crank rents? So if you'll scroll, oh, I got this roller. So if we scroll down, so this is like literally how like my brain was working through this. Current rent, when the next increase is, when we have to notice them, you have to notice them 90 days before you get the increase. So if I want to raise rents, if I raise rents right now, what is it, March? April, May, June, so July, I get paid for it. So we're always thinking 3 months in advance to make sure we're safe. And then immediately going with what we can actually do right away. And then you kind of get into the other side of it is like the cash outlay. So this is what I was going over before. So depreciation is $24,000 a year. Just $650 divided by 27.5. 1 to 4 units. The feds say it'll be worth nothing in 27.5 years, which is whatever. The interest is $17,000. Figuring a tax rate of 35%. That's 15,000 in the pocket. So now I went from, I'm getting good at this thing. So initially I was at like 700 a month. So by raising rents, call me. By raising rents and using just the tax strategies that are available to anyone that owns property, that's pretty significant. So 15,000 plus 12,000. Yeah. So now it's like we haven't even gotten into actually the debt payoff. So when you guys get this, we also have the amortization thing on the back end of it. So we can actually calculate the debt. Oh, this is, when you get it, oh, there we go. It's up there. So 12 months, 10,000 in principal paid off. So that little turd that I paid too much for will be 37 grand, like that. And so if you own a house, think about a HELOC intelligently, right? Make sure that you're not going to get yourself in a negative carry situation. Negative carry is where like you're losing money on a monthly basis. And then start to realize like the economic benefits of this. This is how people get rich. It's not by working. You work until you have enough to buy something that makes you money. And real estate, I really feel like is the safest thing out there. That's where I pretty much have all of my eggs are in that basket, right? What happens if it burns down?
Insured.
You get something rebuilt. We know about that. What happens if Apple gets nuked and you own a bunch of Apple stock? It just goes to zero, right? Because you own, it's gone. Right? All the iPhones stopped updating and they all stuck and broke. So the difference between like stocks and bonds, which is, right, it's either stocks and bonds or real estate. Those are kind of like the two major things, unless you're like storing gas and bullets, which is great too. Just not going to make you money every month. So if it burns down or there's a natural disaster that happens, it's insured. I have landlord insurance where if more than $10,000 worth of damage is done, the insurance steps in and takes care of it. Right, so you have, let's say like, you know, the concern is you have a bunch of meth heads in there cooking meth in the bathtub and, you know, trash the place. Well, there's insurance for that as well. It goes up in value and it's always needed. And the only way you ever lose money is if you sell. And selling real estate isn't easy, right? Like I can go and buy stock and then 2 seconds later, sell the stock and make a mistake. Oh, it's down, I'm gonna sell before it goes down anymore, then it goes back up. You're like, oh crap, right? Because it's liquid. The ability to move in and out of assets is a bad thing for compound interest. What you want is you want to be able to buy something and it'd be very difficult to sell. You gotta meet with one of us, gotta take pictures of your house, you gotta walk through with a bunch of strangers, we gotta do a bunch of paperwork, you gotta wait 45 days. You know, so we like to invest in illiquid assets so we don't make bad decisions. Who here owns stock? You thought about selling some of your stock? Right, because you can't, oh, maybe I'll get out, but now we're like trying to time the market. I sold some stock. And then it went up. That's why I like the illiquid assets, because it protects you against yourself. What else we have on here? So before we ever buy something, right? You see it. There we go. We can use. You guys want to know like a really quick rule to see if something's even worth writing an offer on?
Yeah.
All right. Let's start with. We'll look at properties and figure it out pretty quick. So this is called the cap rate. So what a cap rate is it's a measure of like overall return on an asset. So it's $500,000. What do we think the rent's going to be on something like this? $1,250 times 4, 5,000. Is that safe number? 5,000 for $500,000. Well, actually, I just spent 500. Let's go 4,000. So everyone take 4,000 in your calculator. And we annualize it. 4,000 times 12. So that equals 48,000. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Yay. So this is going to be our rents on this $500,000 thing. But we know that there's expenses. Insurance, taxes, maintenance, vacancy, repairs, whatever, right? So let's take 48,000 times 0.7. That means 30% of this is gonna go towards expenses. Fair? So I bring in 48, 30% goes out. What's that? 48,000 times 0.7. What?
33,600.
Increase.
33,000.
Okay, so this is called net operating income. That means income after all expenses is net. Okay? Now, take that number and divide it by that number. If it's north of 5, it will cash flow. If it's south of 5, it will not. The number is
Or north.
6.
6.7.
Almost
Almost
7.
7.
There's two ways you cap rate. So the first way is assuming you have a mortgage. That's why we look at this. Anything worth about 5.5, depending on interest rates. Right? If interest rates go up, we might have to go like a 35% and make this 65% because more of it's going to go towards expenses. But right now in this current rate environment, about 30% is going to go towards expenses, so you're going to have a healthy return. Or if you paid cash for this, you would be making 6.5% return on your $500,000 after all expenses. And then you can add back in depreciation. That's it, because you don't have mortgage paid down, you don't have, yeah. Then you add depreciation in, which is at 27.5. And then you would get another number that would be north of 7, and that would be called a quasi pre-tax income. That's how you value bonds. There's like some bonds, like a municipal bond, so you go invest in like a dam, and they give you post-tax or tax-free income. And so then you compare the $1,000 a month that your tax-free bond gives you, and say, well, the one I pay taxes on has to pay me $1,300 a month to get the same thing. So then that would be a quasi pre-tax income of $1,300. So that's all that is you add your depreciation back in. So let's do one that doesn't make sense. Let's just simply change it. It's $500,000. What do you think the loser is going to be? This thing makes $3,000. So it's a $500,000 triplex, and the total rent is $1,000 a unit. So that's $3,000. So everyone go 3,000 times 12.
3,600.
36,000. Okay, expense ratio is
30%.
30%, 0.7.
so 36,000 times 0.7.
25 grand. 25,
25,000. Divided by the purchase price? 5%.
flat 5.
So this will probably not make money. But if it's, so what?
Raise the
The
rents.
rents.
Raise the rents, right? Yeah, so then the question would be like, can I raise the rents? Will it break even? So, before you're like, so I encourage everyone, go on Zillow or one of our 541 sold website, find something, right? You can even do this for a single family home. Now, as you'll notice, single families are harder to cap rate because there's only one rental unit there, but rents are stupid, so it just might work. So let's go a $500,000 house, which used to be a $300,000 house, $200,000 house. What's it gonna rent for? It's a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,800 square footer. Bed said $125. $2,250. Fair? Should we do $2,250? 25?
You probably get 25.
$2,750? Okay. So get your calculators out. You guys gotta help me here. That's terrible. Okay. So we take the gross rents times 12, okay, annualized it, which is
33,000.
33. And we multiply it by what?
0.7,
Because we have a,
30% expense.
what does that net us?
23.
What do we do next?
Divided by 500.
And it is?
4.6.
So you don't have to go see this place, because you know you're not gonna beat them up on price, and the question is, can I get the rents higher than that? Like, I hope not, good God, right? You're paying $2,700 a month. So you can immediately, you can start looking at properties online and say, nope, 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 save, nope, 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 save, and then those two will be sold, nope, 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 save. But now you can take rents times 12, times 0.7, divide by the purchase price. And it works on your phone calculator. You don't have to like write anything down. Rents times 12, times 0.7, divide by the purchase price. If it's north of 5, it's viable, especially if you can raise the rents. Knowing that raising the rents really is the big lever versus like trying to get a lower price. Pretty much you should always expect when you're buying investment properties or any property, especially right now, to pay full price or more. Make sense?
Sure does.
Okay, if we have time, we could go through, does anyone like want to run like a financial model? Maybe do a fake one?
I have a question from Instagram. If I'm 32, is it too late to have enough income from rentals to stop working at 55 or 60?
No! You got plenty of time, dog. So 32 to 55, is that 23 years?
Something like that.
What do we want to, so we have to make assumptions. So we're 32 now, and the goal is to retire at 55.
Yep.
That gives us 28 years. Please be right. Yes. Do they own a house now?
I don't think so.
Okay. So we're starting at 0. So the first thing you gotta do is keep your expenses. Like, don't buy a Lambo. Okay, because you don't want to lose money. That's like rule number 2. Don't sell, don't lose money. So if we start at 0 and this individual is able to save, let's say $500 a month. We have a $4,000 duplex. How much do we need? 25 grand? So it's gonna, it's, right? I like that compound interest. It's slow. Right, so it starts here, and then like the parabola happens. Right, so this is like, this is addition, and this is multiplication. But it's all, you're on the same trajectory. So what is that gonna be? 50 months. So in 4 years, so year 4, now he's 36, he buys his 1 unit, okay? At 37, did he or she or them there?
It's a he.
He, okay, and then, right, so now we know, hey, I'm open, man. Oh, cool. So we're getting 30,000 a month after the end of year 1. Adam Rutledge was banned from this. Okay, now year 2, he buys his second house, and so this carries. So we're, first 2 years you're at 30, right? Actually, no. This one, what are you at, 16 times 12? I hope you guys appreciate that I busted my graphing calculator out.
Looks like a dinosaur calculator.
Okay, 19.2. 19.2 because you're saving, right? So 19.2 divided by 12. Yeah, 16. So now we augment. We go 1,600 plus the 500 you were already saving because you didn't buy a Lambo, right? So I was saving 500 for 4 years so I could buy my first deal. I'm plus 1,600 plus by 5. So now I can save 2,100. See how we're already starting to go, kind of come off of that flat line? So he buys, so he's at 30, buys number 2, gets a roommate. Right, get a 3-bedroom house, get a roommate, roommate pays, what's a roommate pay? $27.50 a month too? Now let's say we skip a year, you're 39, and you have your third. So 19.2, you're at 30, plus the 15, right? Because now this is making you 30 because you moved out of it. You moved out of this one, 15. So yeah, by the time you're on your third, these two combined, total economic benefit is 45,000. But let's be realistic. So we remove the economic benefit, we just go back to cash flow, right? Because you're not gonna retire on debt payoff, you're gonna retire on what you're bringing in. So this bad dog, what was the payment was 2, but it brought in 4. Yeah, so you're, for simple math, you're 2,000 a month here, and you're 300 a month here. And on this one, you're 300 a month. Now Fannie Mae's only lets you have 10 mortgages. Once you get past 10, you either have to go to a different, I think Penny Mac will allow you to have 20, maybe, or you go to private financing, like local banks will do what's called a portfolio loan, and they don't sell it to Fannie and Freddie. Fannie and Freddie are the guys that buy all of the mortgages from the mortgage brokers. Mortgage broker lends you $300,000. You go buy your house. Fannie Mae buys that loan from the mortgage broker. They go issue the loan again. That's how most of them go. So after, let's say 10, you have to then use a bank, and the bank holds your loan and they don't sell it. But now let's say it's every other year. You're 41, and this is house number 4. You're 45. This is house number 5. You're 47. And this is house number 6. You're 48, 7, 49, 8. Let's just make it 50 instead. Now you're at 50 and you have 9. So 300. No, that's not gonna be right. So it was 3, but are the rent's gonna go up over 14 years? So we can fast forward. I mean, this could be like, we could make an Excel sheet out of it. So let's say that you're 2,000, by the time you're at retirement age, 14 years after you bought it, we'll just use mine. So I was at 8 and 5, I was at 13, now it's at 25. That's a double. So we'll do a double in cash flow. So now, but remember, it's more expensive in the future too. Gas is $80 a gallon. So we'll double all these. 600, 600. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 48. So from 32 to 50, we have 4,800 a month in passive income coming in conservatively. And that is excluding the tax benefits that actually are cash, as well as the debt pay down. So the answer is no, you have plenty of time. You could probably do it in 10.
I'd say you could probably double those number of doors if you're buying more property with the equity that you're accruing through those years too.
Yeah, so this is like the simplest, dumbed down version. But it's like, one of my mentors is Grant Cardone, and he was worth $20 million and was still driving a Toyota Camry. Like, you can either have it now, or you can have it later. It took me forever to understand the concept of you can't have your cake and eat it too. Because what happens is if you eat your cake, then the cake is gone. And I was like, oh. I mean, it was like 2 years ago I figured this out. I don't know. And then for all intents and purposes, I thought it was intensive purposes. So I'm not the smartest guy ever, but like, for all intensive purposes. So you simply just live simply, right? So if right now you live like no one else, nothing fancy, maybe you eat at home more and you go out, don't go to the country club, easy on the hobbies, and later on you can live like none of them can. Because you can either, right, you're 500 a month, how easy is that to blow 125 a week?
Easy.
Right, you gotta get started. But you can see the snowball really starts to get wild. Yeah, let's just say, for the hell of it, that he actually ended up with 15 doors. So that's 14 times 6, 6,000, 24, 8,400 plus 4. That's 10 grand a month. That's just 12. Because he took some equity out of a couple of these conservatively and bought more. And then used the big lever, which is rents. He wasn't beating anyone up on price this whole way. He's an easy buyer. Hey, I'll take it. As long as it, goes through the inspection. If it needs a new roof, we may have to talk about it, but minor stuff, I'll fix it as soon as I buy it. Or a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just fix that stuff when the tenant moves out. Like, oh yeah, the carpet's messed up. Okay, well, we're not gonna replace the carpet. Well, the guy that messed the carpet up's there. We'll just wait for them to move out. And then we'll replace the carpet. So yeah, you're at 10 grand in no time, because each one of these things, right, is they're going up in value, the debt's getting paid off. So you have this person would have millions of dollars in net worth. that the bank would very much likely say, hey, we'll sell you a 30-plex, we'll sell you a 50-plex. You got all this equity, you have all this cash flow, there's no way that you could screw this up. And if you do screw it up, we'll just sell some of your stuff and pay ourselves off. And if it burns, it'll get replaced. And people are always going to need a place to live regardless of what the economy does. Make sense?
That does.
Yeah, right? That's why it's like the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. So you start by saving $500 a month, or look into a home equity line of credit if you already own something, and get with us. We can connect you with lenders, we can go over strategy, we can run actual numbers on what you think is gonna happen, and then you can see it spit out on the other end. Like this is the deal I bought in November. It's real, and we just bumped rents. One of the guys moved out, it went from an $800 a month unit to $1,500. That's what the market rent is on these puppies. It's like, oh, okay, sweet. And then everyone else gets their 9.9%. And it's still affordable housing. We're talking $1,000 a month. You know, so you also provide an essential need to a lot of people by doing this, right? Like they have to have somewhere to live. Yeah, like 40% of the world will never own real estate. They have no desire to. You know, they want to be able to come and go as they please and have someone else mow the lawn. I get it. Someone else, hey, toilet broke, exit. I'm getting cocktails. Did anyone else have any other questions? Or thoughts?
What if you almost have the money but you can't finance because you haven't been in your new business for long enough?
Co-signer? What up, Seth?
Yeah.
Hook it up. Yeah, if you're a 1099 employee, you have to have 2 years of tax returns. And they're gonna average those out for you to borrow. No? What you got me?
Well, you, to use FHA for sure, but if you have more down, no. There's these self-employed programs, but 10% down for primary residence, 1099, 1 year, have to have a full year.
Well, there you go. So there's lending options out there, right? We specialize in the real estate space. Like I can't do these numbers. I know enough in the mortgage world to get in trouble.
Yeah.
And I've spit out some rates, but I don't know all the intricacies. That's why we would connect you with a good lender like one of these two here to help fill in the gaps. But no, actually, we have a product for you. Now you could pull some money out of maybe your 401k to make the down payment, or borrow against your 401k. Like there's all kinds of ways to move the money around that you have to make this stuff work. But the big takeaway is do something, and your future self will thank you greatly.